So I'm going to recount some moments from my life. This one was really crazy. In the spring of 2007, I was working, in the winter, like January, February, I was working processing mortgages for the First Horizon Bank. And that's when I realized, it's like, yeah, I had all the financial information at my fingertips. I'd go to work every morning at 5 in the morning, and I would, people would call in on an 800 number and ask me if they qualified for a mortgage. And I'd find out certain things about them, like if they had any mortgages or HELOCs or whatever, all these things, right? And basically I'd had training to do that, and I was seeing that nobody qualified, and that there was a lot of bankruptcies looming. And so I quit my job. I got my last paycheck. I actually got fired from my job on purpose so that they could just give me my paycheck within 48 hours, because that's Oregon law. And so I got my supervisor to fire me. It's pretty easy. And then I realized, at the same time that this was happening, that I realized these things about the economy, I realized that I was being betrayed at home, and that my ex-wife, who had been going to therapy, had gone against what her therapist told her, and had started to let her family see my children behind my back before there was any resolution between all of us as adults. And I was kind of shocked. I was terrified. I was terribly dismayed, crestfallen, saddened by this betrayal, and that my son Helios, at the age of 4, was the one to tell me. And so I needed to just take a step back from everything for a minute. And I didn't have a lot of money. I had my last paycheck, and I had almost all the bills covered, you could say, for that moment. And so I said, "I'm leaving you, Sarah," and I went to Eugene. And it was in Eugene that I took care of some health things. I had some health. I found out about a kind of serious health problem, and that had to get taken care of, and that since then has more or less been taken care of. But what was crazy about that time was that somehow my employer, they had already given me my last check supposedly, but for somehow they sent me another check of the same amount of money, like seriously a lot of money, in the mail. And my ex-wife called me to say, "Hey, you have another check here from your employer." I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll come back to Bend for a minute and pick up that check and then move on." And that spring of 2007, I didn't have any money. So when I left Eugene, I had to hitchhike out of Eugene with my backpack, and it was raining. But up in the mountains by the Blue River Ranger Station and by Vida, or I can't remember what the name of that one store, it was snowing. And it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was going to get stuck in the forest in a snowstorm, a really bad one. And so I had like a couple bucks on me, that's it. And at that time in the world, you could still get a newspaper out of one of those one of those newspaper dispensers where you put a couple coins in and you open it up and it gave you you could get a newspaper. You were on the honor system, just get one newspaper too, and not a whole bunch. But in that moment, I had a poncho. I had like one of those Mexican ponchos, and so I got a bunch of newspapers out of one of those dispensers for 50 cents. And I kept walking up the road gathering branches and putting the branches in the newspaper underneath my poncho so it would start to dry out and stay dry. And I got to this one turnoff into the forest, and I made a fire. And I stayed alive all night in one of the worst blizzards ever in that moment. in spring of 2007, early spring. And it was really hard. I was worried about dying. I was worried about freezing to death. And so I had to keep this fire going all night. And so I kept this fire going all night. I almost fell asleep at one point, and the fire almost went out. And I woke up just in time to keep it going again. And I was really cold. And then the morning came. And I was like, okay, time to just go. Because if I don't leave now, I mean, I can't just stay here by a fire all the time. I got to get back to Bend. So I went out on the road. And who was the first person to, like, drive by? But this guy named Cully, who was also like having troubles with this woman and had a couple kids, and a fellow pot smoker, and so it was really weird. He picked me up. It was like, wow, how did this come about? You know, he screeched to a halt, and he's like, what are you doing here on the side of the road, and like this early in the morning in the middle of the forest? I was like, man, if I could only tell you. And so he gave me a ride back to Bend, and I survived this terrible snowstorm. It was a scary moment of my life, and but if it hadn't been for my resourcefulness and my survival skills, I wouldn't have survived. And there's been many instances like that in my life. I'll give you another one. So in 1998, I went to Costa Rica, and the plane that I flew on we almost went down, literally on United Airlines flight in September of '98. Pacaya, outside of Guatemala City, erupted as we were about to arrive in Guatemala City to do a layover, and our plane's engines filled with ash, and we were going down. And needless to say, the pilots knew what to do. They turned the engines off. The air came back into the turbines, and the ash cleared out, and they restarted the system, and we skated out of there. We almost hit the side of a mountain, and we had to emergency land in El Salvador, and then we went on to Costa Rica. But then I became an adventure tour guide for a minute, and in '98, Hurricane Mitch happened, and back then there wasn't a lot of electronics, so we didn't know what was going on. And this night, I was sitting in my room. I was living in this place called Pejivalle, and it's a teeny little town living right next to a river, and so we were river guides, kayaking guides, whatever, rafting guides, all kinds of different things. And so my buddy, whose family I was living with, comes to me and goes, hey, we're going fishing tonight, you want to go? I'm like, sure, let's go. It was slightly raining. It was, no big deal, supposedly. So I was like, yeah, let's go. So I get in the back of the Land Cruiser, and I'm like, and we start going, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's a raft here and everything. And yeah, we're going rafting. We're going to fish on the river. I'm like, whoa, have you ever rafted at night on this river? The Pacuare River. Very dangerous river if you're there at night, especially in the rainy season. Category 3 and 4 rapids. And they're like, oh yeah, we've done this river at night. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. And so then I had never done a river trip at night. Needless to say, never in the Pacuare, and needless to say, never in a hurricane. And we didn't know it was a hurricane because none of us had any electronics. Like I said back then, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no like data you could access on your phone. So we went to the river. We put into the river, and we started going down the river. And it was then we realized this was not just a rainstorm. This was like something pretty heavy duty. We went down the river anyway at night, and there's witnesses to all that. And because we got out of the river in the morning, and there's this place at the takeout we got out at, the people were like, what the fuck are you doing here? And we're like, well, we just did the river. What? You just did the river? It was Hurricane Mitch. There was 3 hurricanes that formed into one. It flattened Central America. And I had a Red Cross credential, so at that point we went and helped Nicaragua a little bit and got some clothes and stuff. But that was after. But we went back to the shop where we were guiding out of, and the people were just like arriving in the morning. The hurricane had passed, and we're like, whoa, where are you guys coming from? We're like, we're coming from the river. They're like, what? Yeah, we rafted the river at night. And they're like, what? You rafted the river at night in the hurricane? Nobody, first of all, the other people in the shop said, first of all, nobody has ever rafted the river at night. Not even the Native American tribes in that area. To our knowledge, nobody's ever done that. And secondly, nobody certainly has ever rafted the river at night in a hurricane. So you guys are like gods. And I was like, oh, thanks. But I didn't even know. And I was scared shitless the whole time, to tell you the truth. But so then, okay, fast forward 20 years to 2018. And I had made a choice to go to Costa Rica and not go to Las Vegas. I was going to go to Las Vegas and file some paperwork, but I decided not to go. And right after I decided not to go, and I had bought my plane for Costa Rica, the guy who shot everybody at the Country Music Festival shot everybody, and I wouldn't have been able to do my paperwork anyway, so it was like, oh yeah, that was a good thing I didn't decide to go. It's a good thing I didn't go to Las Vegas. But when I went to Costa Rica, I reconnected with these guys who I was on the river with 20 years ago. And we're like, yeah, let's go down the river. We'll do a 2-day river trip. We'll stay overnight. And so we get to this point where we're going to camp for the night, and it starts raining like crazy. It's like, holy shit, what's this now? And at this point, we did have electronics now, and there was a way to get signal, and there was a way to get data, and we realized we had started to raft the river in Hurricane Nate. And so, like, I'm on the river again 20 years later, except not at night this time. And half the buddies that I used to be on the river with were at the World Champion rafting event in Japan that year, and they were there as the Costa Rican contingent. And while they were there, their brother and their sister was on the river with me in Hurricane Nate, because the second day, well, the river rose all night long, and then the second day, it was still really high. It was like 2 meters or 3 meters higher than normal. It was like raging Bull River, dude. Like, the second day should have normally taken us 3 hours or 4 hours to do, maybe, on a normal day rafting the river. But because it was right after Hurricane Nate, it took us 45 minutes to go down the river. And again, it was like we got out the place where we got out 20 years ago, and the guy was like, wait a minute, I recognize you somehow. And I was like, yeah, we did the river 20 years ago after Hurricane Mitch. He's like, holy shit, I remember you. And I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. And yeah, so I did that river twice. Well, I've done that river more than twice. That River Pequari, I've done it more than twice. But I've done it twice in a hurricane, once at night. Okay, so talk about the odds. Thanks. Have a good one.